The bar was called the Void's Edge, and it was exactly the kind of place where trouble came to find you. It sat in the lower levels of Kepler Station, a massive trading hub that floated in neutral space between three empires. Here, species that had fought wars against each other drank side by side. Here, credits mattered more than old hatreds. Most of the time, Mira Chun sat alone at the bar, her fingers wrapped around a glass that glowed soft amber in the dim light. She was small by human standards, and humans were already considered small by most species in the galaxy. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie. Her clothes were worn and practical, the kind a freighter mechanic might wear. She looked tired. She looked ordinary. She looked like someone who had given up on expecting anything good from the universe. This was exactly what she wanted. People to see. Mira had been on this station for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of watching, listening, and waiting. 3 weeks of pretending to be nobody while hunting for somebody very dangerous. She worked for Terran Special Operations Command, a branch of the human military that officially did not exist. Her mission was to find a weapons trafficking ring that had been selling military-grade technology to insurgent groups across 3 systems. Thousands had died because of weapons this ring had sold. Thousands more would die if they were not stopped. Tonight she was waiting for a contact. A nervous little Sindari merchant who had promised to give her names in exchange for protection. He was supposed to be here an hour ago. She was starting to think he was not coming at all. The door to the bar slid open, and 3 Vrakith walked in. Myra did not look up, but she saw them in the mirror behind the bar. The Vrakith were hard to miss. They stood over 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in thick green scales that could stop a knife blade. Each of them had 4 arms, all corded with muscle. Their eyes were yellow and slitted like a snake's, and their mouths were full of teeth designed for tearing meat. The Vrakith came from a heavy gravity world that had turned them into living weapons. Their entire culture was built around strength and dominance. They had fought humanity in the border wars 15 years ago, a brutal conflict that had ended in a stalemate neither side wanted to admit. The Vrakith had never forgiven humans for surviving. They had expected to crush the soft-skinned newcomers to the galaxy. Instead, they had bled for every inch of ground and eventually agreed to a peace treaty that tasted like ash. In their mouths, the 3 soldiers found a table in the corner and ordered drinks. Myra could hear them talking in their rumbling language, their voices too loud, their movements too aggressive. They were drunk, she realized. Drunk and looking for something to break. The largest of them was called Kothrak, though Myra did not know this yet. He was a decorated veteran of 3 military campaigns. He had killed enemies in close combat more times than he could count. On his homeworld, he was considered a hero. Here, in this bar, he was just another angry soldier with too much time and too much alcohol in his blood. Kothrak noticed her. He saw a small human female sitting alone, nursing a drink, looking at nothing. Something dark and mean stirred in his chest. He hated humans. He hated the peace that had stolen his purpose. He hated this miserable station where he had to pretend that the softskins were his equals. He stood up and walked toward the bar. His companions watched with knowing grins. They had seen this before. They knew what was coming. Kothrak stopped right behind the human woman. She did not turn around. She did not seem to notice him at all. This made him angrier. He reached out with one of his massive hands and knocked her drink over. The amber liquid spilled across the bar and dripped onto the floor. The bartender, a 4-eyed creature from a species Mira did not recognize, quickly moved to the other end of the bar and pretended to be very busy cleaning glasses. Myra looked at the spilled drink. Then she looked up at the Vrakith standing behind her. "My apologies," she said quietly. "I didn't realize I was in your way." She got up and moved to a seat further down the bar. She did not make eye contact. She did not raise her voice. She did everything a scared, weak person would do when faced with a predator. Kothrak followed her. "You're in my bar," he said, his voice a low growl that made the glasses on the shelves vibrate. "Your kind doesn't belong here. Your kind doesn't belong anywhere." Myra kept her eyes down. "I don't want any trouble." "Then you should have stayed on your dead little planet." The bar had gone quiet. Other patrons were looking away, finding sudden interest in their drinks, their conversations, the walls. Nobody wanted to get involved. The Vraketh were known for their temper, and station security rarely bothered investigating when a human got hurt by one of them. It was easier to look the other way. Kothrak's companions had joined him now, forming a wall of scales and muscle behind their leader. One of them laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "Look at it," the laughing one said. "It's trembling." "They all tremble. Weak things." Myra said nothing. She stared at the bar top as if it contained the answers to all the universe's questions. This only made Kothrak angrier. He wanted her to fight. He wanted her to give him an excuse. Her silence, her submission, it was an insult somehow. It proved everything he believed about humans. They were prey animals pretending to be people. "Apologize," he demanded. "Apologize for existing in my presence. Get on your knees and beg for your life, and maybe I'll let you crawl out of here." Myra finally looked up at him for just a moment. Something changed in her eyes. The fear disappeared. The weakness disappeared. What replaced it was something old and cold and utterly without mercy. It was the look of a predator that had been pretending to be prey. Kothrak felt a chill run down his spine. Some ancient instinct, buried deep in his warrior's brain, screamed at him to step back, to walk away, to find easier prey. But his pride was stronger than his instincts. He had never backed down from anything in his life. He was not going to start now, and certainly not because of a look from a pathetic human female. He reached down and grabbed her shoulder. His claws dug into her flesh hard enough to bruise, hard enough to hurt. He yanked her off the stool and threw her to the floor. "I said apologize," he roared. Myra lay on the floor for a moment. Then, slowly, she stood up. She did not dust herself off. She did not check for injuries. Her body had changed in ways that only trained killers would recognize. Her weight had shifted. Her breathing had slowed. Her hands hung loose at her sides, ready for anything. She looked at Kothrak, and she smiled. It was not a nice smile. "No," she said. Kothrak stared at the human woman standing before him. She had said no. No one said no to him. No one had ever said no to him and lived to tell about it. He shook off the strange feeling that had crept into his chest. He was being foolish. This was a human female. She weighed maybe 60 kilograms. He weighed over 200. He had killed warriors twice his size in ritual combat. He had torn through enemy soldiers with his bare hands. Whatever he had seen in her eyes was a trick, nothing more. A desperate bluff from a cornered animal. "What did you say to me?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "I said no." Myra's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I won't apologize. I won't kneel. And if you touch me again, you'll regret it." The bar was completely silent now. Even the music had stopped. Every eye was on them, though most patrons were already calculating the fastest routes to the exits. They knew how this was going to end. They had seen it before. The human would be beaten, maybe killed, and the Vraketh would walk out laughing. Kothrak's companions were grinning. This was getting interesting. "You dare threaten me?" Kothrak laughed, a sound like thunder rolling through mountains. "You?" A soft-skinned, weak-boned, pathetic little. He reached for her again. This time, he would not just throw her to the floor. This time, he would hurt her. He would break her arm, maybe, or crush her throat. He would show everyone in this bar what happened to humans who forgot their place. What happened Next took 2.3 seconds. Myra moved. She did not step back, which was what Kothrak expected. She did not try to run, which was what any sane person would do. Instead, she moved forward, directly into his reach. This was the last place anyone should go when fighting a Vraekith. Their forearms meant they could grab you from multiple directions. Their massive bodies meant they could crush you against their chest. Going close was suicide, unless you knew exactly what you were doing. Myra's elbow drove into a spot beneath Kothrak's second left arm. It was a small spot, hidden between the scales, where a cluster of nerves lay close to the surface. She hit it with the force and precision of a surgeon cutting into flesh. Pain exploded through Kothrak's body, the kind of pain that short-circuited thought and turned muscles to water before he could even begin to react. Her palm struck his throat. The Vraekith throat was armored with thick scales, but there was a gap, a small vulnerable space where the scales met at the front. Mira's palm found this gap perfectly. Kothrak's breath stopped. His vision blurred, and then her knee found the joint of his primary leg. Vraekith legs were strong, built to support their massive bodies in high gravity. But like all joints, they only bent one way. Myra's knee struck at exactly the right angle to hyperextend the joint. Not enough to break it, but enough to make it buckle. Kothrak, a warrior who had never lost a fight, hit the floor before he understood he was falling. He lay there, gasping for breath, his body screaming with pain, his mind trying to understand what had just happened. 3 hits. She had taken him down with 3 hits. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was his companions were staring with their mouths open. Their squad leader, their undefeated squad leader, was writhing on the ground, making sounds that no Vraekith should make. Myra looked at them calmly. She was not breathing hard. She was not sweating. She looked as relaxed as someone who had just finished a gentle walk. "You can carry him out," she said, "or you can join him. Choose." For a moment, they hesitated. They looked at their fallen leader. They looked at this small human woman who had dropped him like he was nothing. Some small, sensible part of their brains told them to pick up Kothrak and leave. To come back another day with weapons and numbers. To be smart about this. But they were Vraekith. Being smart was not their way. Pride was their way. Honor was their way. And this human had just made them look weak. They attacked together. The first one came in high, all 4 arms reaching for her head and shoulders, trying to grab her and crush her against his chest. The second one came in low, going for her legs. Trying to knock her off balance. Myra was not there. When they arrived, she had moved the moment they committed to their attacks, sliding between them like water flowing around rocks. The one going high found only empty air. The one going low stumbled as his target vanished. She hit the low one first, driving her heel into the back of his knee while he was off balance. His leg folded, and he crashed to the ground. Before he could rise, her elbow found the nerve cluster in his neck, the one that controlled consciousness. His eyes rolled back and he went limp. The high one spun around, roaring with rage, swinging all 4 arms in a wild attempt to catch her. He was faster now, more desperate, less controlled. This made him easier to predict. Myra ducked under his arms, stepped inside his reach, and struck him 3 times in the space between heartbeats. Throat, knee, temple. He joined his companions on the floor. The entire fight, from first movement to last body falling, had taken less than 2 minutes. Mira stood in the middle of the fallen Vraekith, surrounded by silence. The bar patrons stared at her with a mixture of terror and disbelief. A Sundari merchant in the corner was recording everything on a hidden device. A human freighter captain sat frozen with his drink halfway to his lips. An old Korvathi philosopher nodded slowly, as if he had just seen a theory proven correct. The door to the bar slid open. Station security had finally arrived, 3 officers walked in. 2 were human. 1 was Vrakith. They looked at the scene before them and stopped dead in their tracks. The Vrakith officer recognized Kothrak. His scales flushed dark with anger. He reached for the weapon at his hip. "Human," he growled. "You're under arrest for assault on military personnel." "You're going to—" "No," Myra interrupted. Her voice was still calm, still pleasant. "I'm not." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small card. It was black and featureless, except for a holographic seal that shifted in the light. The seal showed the emblem of the Terran government. The 2 human officers went pale. They knew what that card meant. They backed away slowly, putting distance between themselves and the woman who held it. The Vrakith officer did not understand. "What is this?" "What is that?" "It means," Myra said quietly, "that this incident didn't happen. It means these 3 soldiers got drunk and fell down some stairs. Repeatedly. It means you're going to forget you ever saw me. And in exchange, I'm going to forget that you reached for your weapon while speaking to an officer of Terran Special Operations Command." She smiled again. The Vrakith officer felt the same chill that Kothrak had felt, the one that said he was standing in front of something dangerous. "Do we understand each other?" They understood. 20 minutes later, the bar was almost back to normal. The Vrakith had been carried out. The other patrons had returned to their drinks and their conversations, though they kept stealing glances at the small human woman who had destroyed 3 warriors without breaking a sweat. Myra sat at the bar again, a fresh drink in front of her. Her cover was blown. 3 weeks of work gone. Her contact would never show now, not after a scene like this. The mission was compromised, and then her communicator vibrated. She looked at the message. It was encrypted, sent through channels that should have been impossible to access. The text was simple and direct. "Impressed by your performance. Perhaps we can help each other. Rear exit. 5 minutes." There was no signature. There did not need to be. The weapons trafficking ring she had been hunting had found her instead. Myra finished her drink, left a credit chip on the bar, and walked toward the rear exit. She was walking into a trap, and she knew it. But traps work both ways. Myra spent the next 12 hours moving through Kepler Station like a ghost. She visited contacts she had made over her years in special operations. Some were human, former soldiers who had drifted into the gray spaces between legal and illegal. Some were alien merchants and information brokers who traded in secrets. A few owed her favors. Most simply feared her enough to help Dodd by the time the station's artificial lights dimmed to simulate night. She had acquired 3 weapons, a set of security override codes, and detailed blueprints of the conference center where the Peace Summit would be held. The summit was taking place on the Concordia, a diplomatic vessel that was currently traveling through neutral space toward the station. In 36 hours, it would dock. The Terran and Vrakith delegations would disembark together, a symbolic gesture of trust. They would walk into the conference center side by side. And if the consortium's plan succeeded, they would die side by side. The strike team was clever. They had spent months placing their operatives in positions throughout the station. Kitchen staff, maintenance workers, security personnel, people who could move freely without attracting attention, people who could get close to the diplomats when the moment came. Myra studied the intelligence the Mimic had provided. 12 operatives, mixed species, each one carrying enough explosives to destroy a city block. They were spread throughout the station, waiting for the signal to move. She could not stop all of them. Not alone. Not in 36 hours. She needed help. This was why she found herself walking into the station's medical bay, toward a recovery room where a certain Vrakith warrior was being treated for injuries he had received from falling downstairs. Kothrak was awake when she entered. He was lying on a bed designed for his species, large and reinforced to support his weight. His scales were dull with pain and medication. His yellow eyes were cloudy but alert. When he saw her, he tried to sit up. Rage twisted his features. "You," he hissed. "Come to finish what you started? If I wanted you dead, you would be dead." Myra pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. "I'm here because I need your help." Kothrak stared at her. Then he laughed, a harsh sound that turned into a cough. "You need my help? After what you did? You humiliated me in front of witnesses. You destroyed my reputation. And now you want me to help you?" "Yes. Why would I ever? Because there's a conspiracy to restart the border wars. Because Raketh officers are part of it. And because if we don't stop them, thousands of your people are going to die." Kothrak fell silent. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, but something in her voice had caught his attention. Something serious. Something that went beyond their personal conflict. "Explain," he said. Myra told him everything. The trafficking ring. The consortium. The plan to assassinate both delegations and frame each side for the other's deaths. She told him about the Raketh officers involved, names he would recognize, names of warriors he had served with, warriors he had respected. When she finished, Kothrak lay very still. His claws had dug into the mattress beneath him, tearing the fabric. His breathing was heavy and slow. "You expect me to believe this?" he said finally. "You expect me to believe that warriors of the Dominion would betray their own people for profit? I don't expect you to believe anything. I expect you to verify." Mira placed a data chip on the table beside his bed. "The Mimic gave me files, communications, financial records. It's all there. Check it yourself. If I'm lying, you'll know." Kothrak looked at the chip. He looked at Myra. Something was happening behind his yellow eyes. A struggle between pride and duty, between hatred and honor. "Why come to me?" he asked. "Of all the people on this station, why come to the person who wanted to kill you?" "Because I need warriors. Real warriors. Not mercenaries who fight for credits, but soldiers who fight for something greater. I saw you in that bar, Kothrak. You're angry, and you're bitter, and you have some ugly ideas about humans. But you're not a traitor. You're not someone who would let your own people die for money." She leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. "You hate me. Fine. You can keep hating me after this is over. But right now, your people and my people are about to be pushed into a war that will kill millions. The ones pushing us are cowards who will never face the consequences of what they've done. They'll sit in their hidden base counting their credits while soldiers like you bleed and die on the front lines." She stood up and walked toward the door. "I'm going to stop them, with or without you. But I could use someone who knows how to fight. Someone whose people trust him. Someone who can help me get close to the Raketh side of the conspiracy." She paused at the door and looked back at him. "You have 6 hours to decide. After that, I'm moving with or without you." Then she was gone. Kothrak lay in the silence of his recovery room for a long time. He looked at the data chip on the table. He thought about what she had said. He thought about the look in her eyes when she had stood over him in the bar, and the look in her eyes now. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen wars begin and end. He had watched friends die in his arms. He had done terrible things in the name of duty and honor. And he had made peace with those things because he believed they served something greater than himself. But if what the humans said was true, then warriors he respected, warriors he had trusted, were going to betray everything he had fought for. He reached for the data chip. 5 hours later, Kothrak walked into a storage bay in the lower levels of the station. His 2 companions from the bar were with him, their wounds bandaged, their pride still burning. They had not wanted to come. They had argued that helping the human was a betrayal of everything they were. And then, Kothrak had shown them the files. Myra was waiting for them. She had laid out weapons on a table, along with diagrams of the conference center and photographs of the 12 operatives they needed to stop. "You came," she said. Kothrak stood very straight. His yellow eyes were clear now, burning with a cold fury. "I verified your information," he said. "You were telling the truth. Commanders I served under, warriors I respected, they're part of this conspiracy. They've sold their honor for credits. What will you do about it?" Kothrak's claws flexed. "I will stop them. I will destroy them. And when this is over, I will see them stripped of their ranks and their names, erased from the memory of our people." He looked at his companions. They nodded grimly. "We are with you," Kothrak said to Myra. "Tell us the plan." Mira allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in days, she felt something like hope. "The strike team will move when the delegations arrive at the conference center," she said. "They'll be scattered throughout the support staff. We need to identify and neutralize them before they can detonate their explosives. 12 operatives. 4 of us. Those are bad numbers. They're better than one of me against 12 of them." Kothrak made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You have a point." Mira began to explain the plan. It was complicated, dangerous, and relied on split-second timing. There was a very good chance some of them would die. But for the first time in 15 years, a human and Vraekith were working together. Not as enemies forced into a temporary truce. Not as rivals pretending to cooperate. But as warriors united against a common threat. It was small thing, perhaps. Just 4 soldiers in a storage bay, planning an impossible mission. But sometimes, that was how history changed. The rear exit of the Void's Edge opened into a narrow service corridor, the kind of place where maintenance workers moved and criminals did business. The lights were dim and yellow. The walls were stained with years of neglect. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and old metal. Mira stepped into the corridor and let the door close behind her. For a moment, she stood alone in the silence. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. It was humanoid in shape, roughly her height, wearing a simple gray suit that seemed to absorb the dim light. Its face was smooth, almost too smooth, without the lines and imperfections that marked most species. Its eyes were flat and gray, like stones at the bottom of a dead river. Myra recognized what it was immediately. A mimic, one of the rarest and most dangerous species in the galaxy. Mimics could change their shape, their voice, their very biology. They could become anyone, anything. They were the perfect spies, the perfect assassins, the perfect intermediaries for people who wanted to stay hidden. "You're impressive," the mimic said. Its voice was flat, without emotion or accent. "We've been watching you since you arrived. We knew what you were. We knew why you were here." Myra did not show surprise. "If you knew, why not kill me?" "Because we wanted to see what you could do. And you exceeded our expectations." The mimic's smooth face stretched into something that was almost a smile. 3 Vraekith veterans, disabled in under 2 minutes. No weapons. No backup. Just training and will. Get to the point. The point is that you're wasted as a soldier. You follow orders from politicians who will never understand what you are. You risk your life for causes you don't choose. You are a blade in the hands of fools. The mimic stepped closer. "My employers can offer you something better." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Your employers are weapons traffickers. They sell death to anyone who can pay. And your government builds weapons that can destroy entire worlds. We simply redistribute what already exists. We are honest about what we are. Can your Terran command say the same?" This was the moment Myra had been waiting for. The mimic was here to recruit her. This meant it would talk. It would answer questions. It would try to convince her that joining them was the right choice. She needed to keep it talking. "What exactly are you offering?" she asked. "Employment. Real employment, not the pretense of service to a nation that will discard you when you're no longer useful. My employers need someone with your skills. Someone who can move through crowds without being noticed. Someone who can kill without leaving traces. Someone who understands that power is the only truth in this universe. And if I refuse?" The mimic's almost smile widened. "We don't leave loose ends. You know too much about our interest in you. If you don't join us, you become a liability. And we remove liabilities." Myra pretended to consider this. She asked questions, the kind of questions a mercenary would ask. How much was the pay? What kind of protection would she receive? Who were her employers, really? What would her first assignment be? The mimic answered. It was eager to convince her, and in its eagerness, it revealed more than it should. It mentioned the hidden base in the drift, the lawless region between territorial borders. It mentioned a consortium of rogue military officers from 6 different species. It mentioned a shipment large enough to arm a small army. And then it mentioned something that made Myra's blood run cold. Your Terran government has been pushing for a new peace initiative. With the Vrakith Dominion, the mimic said casually. A diplomatic summit. Very secret. Very important. The kind of thing that could end the Cold War between your species for good. Myra kept her face neutral. What about it? My employers have decided that peace is bad for business. The summit will fail. The diplomats will die. And when they do, your people and the Vrakith will blame each other. The war will resume. Our profits will triple. When? 48 hours. The attack is already planned. The team is already in position. The mimic studied her face. This is why we need you. After the summit fails, there will be chaos. Opportunities. We need operators who can take advantage of that chaos. Who can move between the explosions and the screaming and the blood without hesitation. Myra had heard enough. She moved. The mimic was faster than the Vrakith had been. Its body was designed for adaptation, for survival. The moment Myra attacked, it shifted, its limbs extending, its bones rearranging, its smooth face splitting open to reveal teeth that had not been there a moment before. But Myra had fought mimics before. She knew their weaknesses. They could change their shape, but they could not change their mass. The core of their body, the central nervous cluster that controlled everything, always stayed in roughly the same place. No matter how they twisted and stretched, that cluster was always there, always vulnerable. Myra did not try to match the mimic's speed. She did not try to grapple with its shifting form. She targeted what could not change. Her first strike drove into the center of its chest, where the cluster lay. The mimic screamed, a sound like static in breaking glass. Its shifting stopped for just a moment as pain overloaded its systems. A moment was enough. Myra's second strike found its throat. Her third found the pressure points on either side of its spine. Each hit was precise, calculated, designed to disable rather than kill. She needed information. She needed this creature alive. The mimic collapsed. Its body tried to shift, to escape, to regenerate around the damage. But Myra was already on top of it. A knife pressed against the place where its throat had reformed. Here's my counteroffer, she said quietly. You tell me everything. Names, locations, the full network. And I let you live. You can't. The knife pressed harder. Blood that was not quite red began to seep around the blade. I can, Myra said. I've killed mimics before. I know exactly how to do it. I know how to make it last. The question is whether you want to find out how long you can survive when someone is cutting you into pieces that are too small to regenerate. The mimic looked into her eyes. It saw the same thing Kothrak had seen. It saw something old and cold and completely, without mercy. It talked. It told her everything. The consortium consisted of 7 officers, one from each major species. They had been running the trafficking operation for 15 years. Their base was a converted research station hidden in an asteroid field in the drift. The next shipment was scheduled to leave in 3 days. Enough weapons to arm 50,000 soldiers. And the attack on the Peace Summit was real. The strike team was made up of 12 specialists, mixed species, each chosen because they could blend in with the diplomatic staff. They were going to pose as support personnel, get close to the delegations, and then detonate enough explosives to level the entire conference center. The Terran diplomats would die. The Vracath diplomats would die. Each side would blame the other. And the border wars would begin again, unless someone stopped them. Mira looked down at the Mimic. It had given her everything she needed. She could kill it now. It would be safer, cleaner. Instead, she hit a nerve cluster in its neck. The Mimic went limp, unconscious, but alive. She had 48 hours. She had no backup, no communications, no official support. The station systems were compromised by the consortium's agents. Any attempt to contact Terran Command would be intercepted. She was alone, but she knew where the attack would happen. She knew who was involved. And she knew something that the consortium did not. Humans did not give up. Not when the stakes were this high. Not ever. Mira dragged the unconscious Mimic into a storage closet and locked the door. Then she walked back into the station, her mind already working on a plan. She had a lot of work to do and not much time to do it. The Concordia docked at Kepler Station on schedule. It was a beautiful ship, sleek and white, designed to represent the best of both species. Its hull bore the emblems of the Terran government and the Vracath Dominion side by side. Its corridors were filled with diplomats and their staff, all dressed in formal attire, all carrying the weight of history on their shoulders. This was the moment that would decide whether 2 civilizations would choose peace or return to war. The delegations disembarked together. Terran diplomats walked beside Vracath representatives, their steps careful, their smiles practiced but sincere. Cameras recorded every moment. Reporters from a dozen species broadcast the scene across the galaxy. No one noticed a small team moving through the maintenance corridors below. Mira led the way, her body moving through the narrow passages with practiced ease. Behind her came Kothrak and his 2 companions, their massive forms somehow managing to stay quiet despite their size. They had studied the blueprints until they knew them by heart. They knew where each operative would be. They knew the timing down to the second. They had to be perfect. There was no room for mistakes. First target is 30 meters ahead, Myra whispered. Kitchen staff. He's carrying the detonator for the main explosive. Kothrak nodded. He moved forward, his scales shifting to a darker color that helped him blend into the shadows. Despite everything, Myra found herself impressed. The Vracath could be silent when they wanted to be. The first operative never saw them coming. One moment, he was walking toward the kitchen with a cart of supplies. The next moment, Kothrak's massive hand closed over his mouth, while Myra's fingers found the nerve cluster in his neck. He went limp without a sound. They hid his body in a storage closet and moved on. 2 of Kothrak's companions split off, heading toward the secondary targets. They would handle the operatives on the Vracath side of the conference center. Mira and Kothrak would take the human side. The next 30 minutes were a blur of movement and violence. They found the second operative posing as a security guard. Mira took him down with a chokehold, while Kothrak watched the corridor. They found a third in the supply room, assembling the final components of his explosive. He tried to fight. He was dead before he hit the ground. Each target was neutralized quickly and quietly. The explosives were disarmed. The detonators were destroyed. One by one, the strike team was dismantled, but nothing ever went perfectly. The 8th operative saw them coming. He was a Sindari, small and quick, with eyes that missed nothing. He spotted Mira emerging from a maintenance hatch and immediately understood what was happening. He ran toward the conference center, toward the delegations, toward the backup detonator hidden in his clothing. If he reached the main hall, if he pressed that button, dozens would die and millions more would follow. Mira ran after him. She was fast. Humans had evolved on the open plains of Earth, built for endurance running, for chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. But the Sindari was faster over short distances, and the conference center was close. He burst through a service door and into the main hall. The delegations were there, gathered around a long table, signing documents that would change history. Guards moved toward the running Sindari, confused, reaching for weapons they would never use in time. The operative's hand went to his chest, where the detonator was hidden. And then something massive and green crashed through the same door, moving faster than anything that Psi should be able to move. Kothrak hit the Sindari like a missile. They both went down in a tangle of limbs and scales. The operative screamed and tried to press the detonator. Kothrak's hand closed around his wrist and squeezed. Moans snapped. The detonator fell to the ground. Mira arrived a moment later. She kicked the detonator away and looked down at the operative. "It's over," she said. The main hall had erupted into chaos. Guards were running everywhere. Diplomats were being rushed toward exits. Reporters were shouting questions that no one was answering. But in the middle of it all, a human woman and a Vraekith warrior stood side by side, their breathing heavy, their bodies ready for more fighting that would never come. The other operatives had been stopped. Kothrak's companions had checked in, their missions successful. 12 terrorists neutralized. 2 conspiracies exposed. 1 war prevented. For a long moment, Myra and Kothrak just stood there, surrounded by confusion and fear. Then Kothrak made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You know," he said, "when you walked into that bar, I thought you were the weakest thing I had ever seen. And now? Now I think you might be the most dangerous." Myra smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." The aftermath took weeks to sort out. The consortium was exposed. Officers from 6 species were arrested. The hidden base in the drift was raided by a joint task force. The weapons stockpile was seized. The trafficking network was dismantled piece by piece. Myra's superiors were not sure what to do with her. She had blown her cover. She had started a fight in a bar. She had recruited enemy soldiers without authorization. She had single-handedly disrupted an international conspiracy using methods that no report could adequately describe. They gave her a commendation. Then they gave her a very long vacation. Then they gave her a new assignment, because people like Mira did not stay retired for long. Kothrak returned to the Vraekith Dominion as something complicated. Some called him a hero for helping stop the attack. Others called him a traitor for working with humans. He told his story anyway, to anyone who would listen. He told them about the human who had beaten him in a fight, and then trusted him to watch her back. He told them that humans were not weak, not prey, not animals pretending to be people. Some of his people listened. Most did not. But some was enough. The peace summit continued. The documents were signed. It was not a perfect peace, and it would take years to heal the wounds of the border wars, but it was a start. 3 months later, on a different station in a different sector, Mira sat alone at a bar. She had a new name, a new face, a new cover. Another mission. Another enemy to hunt. The door opened, and a Vraekith walked in. Not Kothrak, but one of his companions, the younger one who had attacked her in the first bar. He had a scar on his neck now, a souvenir from their mission together. He saw her. Recognition flickered in his yellow eyes. He walked over and sat on the stool beside her. "This seat taken?" he asked. "Not anymore," she said. They sat together in comfortable silence. Two warriors who had learned that the universe was more complicated than the hatreds they had been taught. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, new threats were forming. New conspiracies. New wars waiting to be born. But for now, in a small bar on the edge of known space, an old enemy had become a new friend. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all. Not the strength to destroy. Not the cunning to survive. But the ability to reach across the void between species and find common ground. This was humanity's answer to a hostile universe. Not just surviving. Not just fighting. But learning, slowly and painfully, to trust God, and sometimes that was enough.